made £612,000 in 12 months from 5,000, and this is what I learned. Number one, that aha moment or big success in business usually doesn't happen all at once, but in hindsight, things move slowly and we often only realize how far we've come after we've made a lot of progress. And when people gaze at your journey from afar, they see these sudden huge leaps forward and ask, when was your light bulb moment? And it's an odd question because in reality, there isn't a single defining moment, but rather a series of small steps, piece by piece, until one day you pause, you look back and see how far you've come. When you're in the trenches, you never notice these little wins. Picture it like assembling a jigsaw puzzle. You won't see the whole image as you put each piece in place, but eventually, as you fit more and more pieces together, the entire picture suddenly becomes clear. That's pretty much how my journey's unfolded, and I'd wager it's how it goes for most entrepreneurs too. Number two, don't confuse revenue with profit. High revenue is nice, but it's about what you keep, which is the profit, that keeps your business alive. And as a CEO, always keep a close eye on profit. Let me tell you a story about a friend of mine. Let's call him Bob for the purpose of this video. Bob was all about the revenue that he made. He'd pull in big numbers, but at the end of the day, his bank account didn't show much to boast about. When I'd ask him, Bob, where's all the money? He'd mumble about expenses and some other stuff. So I'd ask Bob, why are you working so hard to end up with no money left over? And Bob would always respond with a blank stare. See, I approach things differently. I didn't measure my success by revenue, but by what was left after expenses, the profit. And this gave me a clear picture of my business's health and helped me predict trends much better than Bob could. By being honest with myself, I got a solid grasp of the value of the money that I was making. I understood the effort that it took to make it and how to be smarter with my spending. And this approach helped me build a business from virtually nothing to £600,000 in just a year, all on my own dime. And the best part, once you master these cost-efficient practices, you can scale them up. Most big corporations are surprisingly bad at managing their expenses because they don't have the same pressure to. Usually because they have excess cash or backed up by investors, but I'm so grateful that I didn't rely on loans or investors because it taught me the value of bootstrapping. And in my view, you should only take on investment capital after you've proven that you can grow your business successfully over a period of time. And trust me, things will go wrong, and often when you least expect it. Imagine having to explain to a room full of angry investors why you messed up. And that's why it's better to make your mistakes on a smaller scale and find solutions. That way, you'll have the know-how and confidence to handle business at a larger scale with investor capital. Number three, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. See, growing a successful business is much easier as a team effort. I naively used to think that the harder that I worked alone, the further that I'd get. But I quickly realized that there's a ceiling on where that got me to. And it got to the point that I was doing these crazy 18-hour days, trading sleep for work, all in my pursuit of success. I felt like if I could just push a little harder, a little longer, I'd finally make it. But I kept hitting a wall because I can't clone myself to be everywhere at once, can I? So I decided to hire someone, and then someone else. And gradually, I found myself less swamped with work and with more time to oversee the business and work on the business. This way, I made sure that things were running smoothly. Then it hit me. The only difference between a £600,000 business and a £60 million business wasn't magic. It was people and systems. And I'll admit, I was one of those people who worried, what if the person I hired doesn't do as well as I would? Or what if they mess up? But the truth was, I was burning out and I needed to share the workload. It was definitely a learning curve to train my staff to match my standards, but eventually I figured out how to get things done just right. Building a business is not about going it alone. That's just being self-employed. It's like they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you need a team. And if you aim to grow your business to anything substantial, it's all about teamwork. Number 4, business success is not the finish line, but the start of new opportunities. Don't let early wins prevent further innovation. When I had my first wins in business, it was exciting, of course, and I'd punch the air and think I was a boss, but that thrill faded fast because my eyes were set on the horizon and I wanted to push the boundaries where I could take it. Growing up, I was under the impression that making 20,000 a month is hitting the jackpot, or it was the limit that society had painted in my mind. That was the kind of money that doctors, lawyers, and bankers would aspire to make. But when I shot past that, it was a huge eye-opening revelation. It made me realize there are no limits, only the ones that we set for ourselves. Then I became curious and ambitious, and I started pushing my boundaries. And interestingly, money after a certain point felt like scoring points on a game of Monopoly. 500, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, even 10,000 in a day all started to feel weirdly normal. I see these numbers come and go, just digits on a screen, and that's the magic of it. Once you become comfortable dealing with larger figures, that imposter syndrome starts to fade. You start to believe in the unbelievable and to feel that you're deserving of it. I used to question myself sometimes, like, do I really deserve to make this kind of money? But soon enough, you eventually grow into the newer, better version of yourself each time you break these mental barriers. And each time you do, it's like hitting a new milestone on a continuous game of self-discovery. Each victory is like unlocking a new level in the game of life, and with each level, you get better and better. Even your perception of reality starts to change. You start seeing the world through this new lens. Even your friends and family will question you, like, haven't you made enough money, or don't you work too much? But what they don't understand is that I see business as a game, and a fun one. And what's more exciting than playing a game that you love? Besides, making money is great, but after the first 100,000, I believe you need a stronger reason to continue growing than just money. The first 100,000 will get you a place to live, a car, food, and even look after your loved ones, and maybe some left over. But all those are primary essential needs. And beyond that, it's just getting a bigger house or a fancier car. Basically, superficial things that won't make as much of a tangible difference to your life as your first 100,000. So money no longer becomes the goal. There needs to be a deeper purpose to keep going, right? And for me, that was the thrill in chasing a bigger dream, a bigger purpose, and pushing the goalposts further and continuing to learn and grow. So whenever I get asked, when will you stop? I think to myself, there is no finish line. I'm not working to reach a certain level of money. I'm doing it because I love the journey of growing and the person that you become as a result of it. Number 5. Taking action will always put you ahead of those who just dream about it. It's not the dreamers, but the doers who succeed in business. We all know somebody like Bob, the kind of guy who's always talking about his revolutionary ideas, promising to design the next new app or software. And that's all it will ever be, just ideas. Nothing concrete ever emerges. Even I used to be a bit like Bob, stuck in the idea phase. I was an avid reader. I'd devour every book I could lay my hands on, trying to stuff all of this knowledge in my brain before taking the plunge. I got so stuck in this phase that I'd even fool myself into thinking I was doing some kind of productive work. And then you get stuck in this loop of information overload, which just leads to this analysis paralysis. And I'm sure some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. My wake-up call came after losing most of my life savings on crypto and a bunch of unwise trades. And I realized that all of the knowledge I was gaining wasn't pushing me forward. So I decided to take the first step. Even though I didn't feel ready, I put one foot in front of the other and slowly started shattering my own limitations about what I could achieve in a short space of time. And guess what? All of this transformation came from taking the first initial step and embracing the possibility of failure. I came to realize once you're prepared to fail, you never actually fail, because if you refuse to quit, what seems like failure is just a detour guiding you away from the wrong turn and onto the right path. So with every failure, you get closer to where you want to go. Number 6, you can learn just as much valuable insight from wins as well as losses. Having success provides valuable insight that you could use to replicate success in another line of business, because most businesses share similar elements. I've come to see business as a game where every success and failure serves as an opportunity to improve. And on the back of every success, I studied how I achieved it so I could repeat that process. And similarly, whenever I experienced a setback, I studied them for lessons to avoid repeating these same mistakes. Nearly every mistake taught me something. The main thing separating a successful entrepreneur from one that didn't is that one continued trying. And if you persist for a long enough time horizon, you will progress further than you've ever imagined. Sadly, many people give up way too early. What kept me going amongst all of these setbacks was a deep motivation to better myself. For me, The discomfort of the fear of going nowhere in life outweighed the temporary setbacks in business, which I viewed as just minor hiccups in a long-term upward trajectory. Our good friend Bob, however, would throw in the towel after 2 or 3 attempts and complain about his failures and then wait for the next trendy business opportunity to come along, only to repeat the cycle. This observation led me to have a revelation. Most businesses share fundamental similarities. If you picture a business as a 10-level game, level 1 is self-employment and level 10 is a multinational corporation. Bob would give up before reaching level 2, but entrepreneurs who persevere, learn and grow to reach the higher levels are more likely to find success in their next venture. Why is that? That's because they've owned their skills to deepening their understanding of what makes a business work. Having the patience to stick with one business long enough allowed me to gain insights into potential pitfalls, hiring, and scaling challenges. As a result, I started noticing how other businesses operated around me subconsciously everywhere I go. It was as if I had some Clark Kent style X-ray vision, but for business operations. Had I been like Bob and given up early, I wouldn't have gained any of these insights. Number 7, the customer is a business's top priority. Not the founder, not the exec, not the operations manager, not the HR. A business serves its customers, so understand your target market. Bob often had big ideas for businesses, but I'd always ask him how he planned to make money from them. I'd ask Bob about his customers and how he'd find them, but Bob often didn't have answers. I found it really odd that some people start businesses without knowing if people even want what they're selling in the first place. For me, I wouldn't start a business unless I knew I could sell my product or service before I even started. This means I knew there would be a pipeline of sales to keep my business going, even if I was starting from scratch. And this is a good trick if you're trying to start a business. If you can't find people interested in what you're selling, it might mean you need to change what you're selling, or how you're selling it, or who you're selling it to. In the end, the business is all about the customer. Without them, there is no business. So don't be cute, meaning don't waste time on small details when starting out. Make sure people want to buy your product first before spending time on other parts. Otherwise, you could end up wasting a whole load of money, time, and effort on something that just nobody wants to buy. Number 8, hire people you're excited to empower. Every employee should be someone you believe in and enjoy working with. Whenever I hired somebody I wasn't sure about, my worries usually turned out to be true. It's tough to fire people, but you can't keep someone who doesn't do their job well or is difficult to work with. That can bring down everyone else's work morale too. When you hire people, choose those who make you excited to see what they can do, because every person you work with should be someone you believe can do a good job, who you actually like working with. When you look forward to working with your team, your job feels more like a fun, shared adventure. It's not just a job anymore, it becomes like a shared mission. Without being cheesy, it genuinely feels like you're in charge of a super team that you've built up, and your mission is to defeat the enemy like you've assembled the Avengers. If your team doesn't feel like you've assembled the Avengers, are you even doing business, bro? Number 9, knowing your business's purpose, or its why. Your why is the key for long-term success. A clear vision guides your actions, but also unites your team together. So I was talking to my buddy Bob about all of these businesses that he wanted to start, and he didn't have a strong reason for starting any of them. He just thought his ideas were cool, but none of Bob's businesses made it past the first year. And I see this happen a lot. People who start a business just because they think it's interesting now usually don't stick around long enough to actually make it successful. And that's because running a business is hard. There are good times and bad times, and you need to really care about why you're doing what you're doing to keep going. If you don't have a good reason to push through the hard times, you probably give up. You also need a strong purpose. Maybe you want to help feed hungry people in Africa, or save up for your grandma's heart surgery, or maybe you just want to make a name for yourself in a field that you care about. These kind of reasons will keep you going even when things get tough. Having a clear goal is important, and it helps you know what to do, and it helps your team work together towards the same thing. People like working for leaders who have big dreams. Just look at companies like Apple or Tesla. Their leaders had big dreams to make the world better, and their teams work hard because they're proud to be a part of that. Number 10, trust your own judgment, because often you know more about what you're doing than others do. See, Bob would try on many occasions to warn me that my ideas and strategies are stupid. But whilst Bob was watching TikTok learning how to make 100,000 an hour from some 18-year-old, I was deploying my real-world ideas into motion and studying and getting real-world tangible feedback from taking action. In the past, I'd often listen to people because they seemed and sounded smart in the topics that they knew well. It cost me so much wasted time and hundreds of thousands of pounds that I'll probably talk about in another video. Now, I've learned to trust my own thinking more than what others say, and this is better for me and my mental health instead of listening to the wrong advice from uncredible sources who don't know what they're talking about. And usually, when you want to try something new and ask a friend's advice, they're unlikely to know any better than you and will probably give you some negative advice. So if you really want to do big things, you have to ignore the noise and just go for it. Number 11, to grow, you may need to move beyond your current circles, because as you progress, you might find less in common with your old acquaintances. And for a long time, I stayed in my comfort zone. I was with people who made me feel okay with where I was, which stopped me from feeling an urge to grow. But then I made some silly mistakes and lost all of my money in crypto, which I'll talk about in another video. Let's just say the experience was incredibly humbling because I spent years saving up that money, so seeing it all vanish was painful. And it was from that moment onwards, I knew I had to make some radical changes. I couldn't just do the same things I've been doing and expect better results in a shorter space of time. So I decided to set really ambitious goals for myself and focused only on the activities that would help me reach those goals. So I stopped going out, I stopped wasting time, I stopped random catch-ups and basically anything that wasn't conducive to reaching these crazy goals that I set for myself. And as I grew and began to change, I noticed it was harder to relate to some previous friends. I wanted to talk about things that they just didn't know or hadn't done yet. I wanted to be inspired and I wanted to learn from the best. But since I didn't have any mentors, I turned to books and the internet for inspiration. Even though things were tough, I made the best of what I had. So guys, this is just a very brief intro into some of the lessons I learned the hard way, so you can learn the easy way. And there's a lot more to come that is just too complex for this one video. So if you want to see those, subscribe and like. And if you have any more questions, drop them in the comments below.